put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? To your point, if you go in there and every time you report to leadership, everything's a green check and you never share your struggles, then when you come and say, hey, we're struggling and we need an extra person, they're going to be like, well, that's not matching up with what you presented.
Today, Tanner and I, we're going to cover some methods to help better market IT and to showcase what we do day in and day out. Because here's the truth, perception becomes reality. If people only see IT when something breaks, then that's how they'll define you. But if they see IT as a partner that drives progress, then that changes everything. Today isn't about bragging rights. It's about communication, influence, and making sure the value of your work is seen and felt across the organization. So Tanner, we've all heard that IT is a thankless job. What have you ever do you deal with that scenario where people just think you're sitting there all waiting to, solve tickets and, that every time that something negative happens, that's really just all people are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think recently it's changed a little bit, but definitely it's something that, from time to time you deal with. A lot of people, like, the interface with you is a ticket, or the interface with IT is a ticket. And because of that, you always pick up whenever they call or when they put in that ticket. So their natural assumption is that that's what you're doing. You're waiting for them to be there. But I just like people that answer phones for customers or members or whatever. I think sometimes it's easy for us to think the same, right? That they're just waiting on a call. But I'm sure they have tasks and we have tasks as well, stuff that we're trying to do in between those interactions.
Yeah, that's something that, and I'll take ownership on this. I felt like, and I still think there's people that think this, but they think that we're literally just waiting there and waiting for a ticket to come in to solve people's issues. And there isn't one single person in our whole department that is sitting there waiting for a ticket to come in. And, that's, some people may not like that because we're not just waiting for tickets so we can respond, but we do try to respond pretty quick to tickets. But, everyone's working on projects. That's all we do.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, at least from the IT's perspective, it feels like projects are the other stuff is a small part of what we do, right? That the projects is the majority of what we do, and that the taking care of the issues that crop up or putting out the fires is some days it's more than others, but overall, I think we would say it's less than half, for most positions. Even some of the help desk positions, I mean, they have a lot of stuff going on too.
Obviously, we're both dealing with the same issue, and I think it's across the board for most ID departments at all organizations. We have a visibility problem, and we've talked several times on communications, and I think this is part of that. Are we showcasing to the employees, the people that we work with at your organization, are we showcasing what we're doing from time to time? For the senior staff and the CEO, are we only showing that what we respond to? Are we just showing them like, hey, we solved 130 tickets? Are we talking about those projects that we're working on every single day and keeping people up to date? That's something that, I've struggled with in the past, and I've really made a focus on showcasing what we do because we all do a ton. And I don't think there's any IT department out there that really isn't just doing a ton of stuff. But if you don't showcase that stuff, like, really no one knows about it.
Yeah, I think not only have we not showcased it, but I think we've actually made the problem worse. I feel like when I first started, if we had to have some sort of downtime or issue or needed to do a patch, we just do it sometimes during the day. Maybe it'd be after hours, but we'd say, hey, we need to reboot this thing or do this thing for 30 minutes. And everybody would be like, okay, that's fine. Doesn't feel like we do that now. It feels like now, if there's any downtime at all, it's after hours, at night, on the weekends. We built like 7 redundancies. We have clusters of machines so that if we have hardware failure, everything just stays up. It feels like a little bit about like how we deliver electricity in the co-op world. Like the lights, when everybody comes home, they flip on the light switch, it's on. They don't know like all the things that go into making sure that that is the case when they flip that on. But I think we made it worse by actually getting better. We in a way, we felt it was a good thing because we got more resilient, more redundant. But ultimately, because I think we spent time in that and we didn't do some of this stuff you were talking about communication, we actually exacerbated the problem.
IT outages are not, as normal as they were back 10, 15 years ago. So we've definitely changed the tune on that.
A lot of tools now as well, they're kind of in the background doing things. You don't see as many reboots for updates. Like some patches are able to be pushed without all that. And it kind of goes back to and supports my other point is a lot of the things we build around are a lot of stuff has gotten to where it's not impactful, whether it's a tool or a patch or any type of downtime or upgrade that we have to do. We've thought it was a good thing, and I think it's taken us out of the eyes of a lot of people.
Yeah, I can even see the same thing with like our security tools. So like people they report phishing emails, and some people aren't doing anything, but we review each and every one of those. And I think they just think it goes off to a magic land every time we don't do something with every single one, but we at least look at it. And for the ones, a lot of times we're taking action. And then like our security tools, we're getting alerts and stuff to check, double check all the time, and monthly reports that we do behind the background that no one ever sees.
Yeah, I mean, really, the security stack in general is completely behind the scenes for most part. I mean, the only thing that, like, we all know that there's usually some sort of EDR now. There's maybe an agent doing SIM logs. There's MFA. You might have some sort of microsegmentation tool, various other things. But really, to the end user, the one thing they're interacting with is maybe MFA. Everything else is behind the scenes, but we all know that there's stuff to do there. Whether if it's segmentation, we're actually applying those rules. If it's EDR, we're responding to those alerts. So we've added a lot of stuff that the user doesn't directly interact with that now we're doing, and maybe we haven't told everybody.
The other thing I was thinking about was I kind of wonder, do a lot of people just think that we're just all a bunch of help desk people, because that's really their main interaction with dealing with IT is the help desk. And don't get me wrong, like at our organizations, we're small, so people wear a lot of hats, and we probably all support end users at least a little bit. But I guess I just wonder what the normal non-technical person, if they really just think like help desk is pretty much all there is.
Yeah, I think maybe it depends on the roles. We have some roles that help with reports. I think those people are pretty. People kind of know, right? The people that are interacting with them are doing so based on those kind of things. And especially I would say if you've grown up in the co-op. I've grown up in the co-op. I started out of college, got right into the co-op. Or really any organization doesn't have to be a co-op, but if you've grown up in your organization, if someone has been there a long time, they remember you in every role. They might have called you to get their password reset. I have people call me even to this day, like, "Hey, can you reset my password?" And I'm like, "Honestly, I don't have permission any longer to do that." And I usually have to, you know, transfer them to someone else. But again, to your point, like once they remember like having that interaction with me, like that's what they think I do, right? Little do they know that at this point they're getting the reliever. It's definitely not the
Yeah.
starting pitcher at this point in my career when it comes down to the basic kind of day to day problems that pop up. So, but yeah, I think people they kind of get I don't know, I think we do this really as just humans, right? We think we've got someone like labeled, and then once we have that label, it's really hard to change that.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that, but you're definitely right. That's a hard thing to shake, especially when someone's dealt with you for years.
Yeah.
That it's really just kind of like, especially if their job hasn't changed.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, some people maybe they just don't have a lot of problems now. The last time they called me, I was doing that. Could be. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, and it's also hard just where you build those relationships and you really get intimate with people over the
Yeah.
years, and it's hard to not have favorites, even though it's not good for the organization.
Yeah. I remember before we had a help desk, we all kind of were help desk. Like I think it was just divvied up percentage of time. Like everybody had 10% of their job was the help desk. And everyone would get a favorite. Like every person in the company would have their favorite person. And then they have like their second favorite and their third. So it was always really intriguing. Like if your phone wasn't ringing and someone else was and they weren't in the office, you were like, am I next or am I going to be fifth? Because they'll go around. One phone
Yeah.
would ring, then it would ring 5 times. Then the next phone would ring 5 times. Then the next phone would ring 5 times. Finally, we're like, "Oh, Tanner, how's it going today?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm your fourth choice, right?"
Yeah. That's the beauty of having offices all in a nearby area.
Yeah. Now with the help desk, we finally did get people trained to use the help desk for the most part, and now we don't get that kind of fun.
Yeah. So it appears that IT in general kind of has like a marketing problem. I know people think IT and marketing have nothing to do with each other, but it's really just marketing our departments. like just from your perspective, what's some of the things where you think like people get the bad rap? IT gets a bad rap from as far as how we communicate.
Yeah. I mean, we're not marketers. Like, some of IT, the last thing they want to do is try to sell themselves, if that makes sense. Sometimes they're quiet folks. Sometimes they just like to work in their office and get their tasks done. And so I just don't think it's our strong point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but if you think about most of the communication we do as an IT group, a lot of it is about something that's wrong. You
Yeah,
know, someone clicked on a phishing email. I got to take down the system for maintenance tonight at 9 p.m. Please reboot your computer because we got a problem going on with our OMS system. Those are
yeah,
all made up, of course, but like think of the emails we typically send out, right? They're not necessarily like, hey, just want to let everybody know, like we improved this, it's twice as fast. Most of the time, it's like there's a problem, there's a maintenance window, there's a cybersecurity thing you really need to be paying attention to. It's all like kind of negative.
yeah. Actually, just me reflecting, the last email I sent out to the entire company was basically like our acceptable use policy and saying stop using your work email for personal things. That's not something that's a positive.
Yeah, look at you. You're already marketing that there. It's maybe not the right marketing. Like
Yeah,
I'm the policy. Yeah, we're marketing policies. That's a good point. Policies. Didn't think about that. Yeah, sure. Those are emails we send, of course.
yeah. So by default, if we don't do any extra work, it really just all the communications come from us are probably kind of negative from an employee's perspective. They're hearing about the bad things that happen, any outages. They're hearing about all the cybersecurity requirements and all that. Really, just we need to put the extra effort into spinning that around.
Yeah, we have a lady who was former director of marketing, and I learned a lot from her talking about how you frame something. Right. Just go back to that last email that we were talking about like maintenance. Right. We could say what we typically say, or at least what we say typically is like we got maintenance from like 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. XYZ applications are going to be offline. These are the different things you can see as an impact. And this is the person you need to call if you have any issues. All right. But I think just framing that in a different way, which is like tonight from 9 to 10 p.m., we're making our application more reliable and adding additional features that'll help increase productivity as we move forward. Maybe you wouldn't say it exactly like that, but you can see how two of those things tell you about the availability of something, but one of them kind of shares it as like, you want this thing to go down. We want
Yeah.
it to be down for an hour because, man, what's it going to be like tomorrow when we get in the office? Versus like, man, this thing's going to be down for an hour. What's going to be broken tomorrow when we get in the office? So I don't think we frame really, really well. And I mean, maybe it's just not our strong suit. Something else, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is sometimes I just think we're so busy that like
It's
we're like it's just like I got to get this email out to let people know about this, and we just don't take any time. We're just so busy we can't even. Sometimes we can't remember all the things that we've done, so there's no way to frame them. I'm like, what'd you do last week? What'd you do last week, Anthony?
and it's hard for me to remember every
Right? I
single week.
mean, but like, how are we gonna frame something when we can't remember what we did last week? Sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely it's extra work to do it, but and we're going to talk about this more in depth. But it is worth the extra work. Like I
It
know we're
is.
all swamped, but it is definitely worth the extra work to make sure you're communicating. And really, just what you just said, I was thinking about it as in regards to electricity. So if we've been doing some transmission upgrades, we don't just notify the members saying, "Hey, your power's going to be out." We tell them, say, "Hey, this is a planned outage. We're upgrading the system for future reliability." We basically tell them the why. So yeah, you're definitely right. When we are emailing about outages, now not everything's going to have a positive spin that you can put on it, but if it's
Mhm.
part of some upgrade or some benefit to the organization, we should definitely have that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's not something we just think about, right? We know it, but honestly, and we've talked about this in prior episodes, but explaining the why is just so critical. People are almost willing to do anything if you can explain why it has to happen. And if you're going to explain the why, like explain the good things, let them know there's going to be the issue, or maybe it's a cyber restriction. Like, hey, um, we're going to be restricting X. Like, I'm trying to think. What's I'm trying to think of a categorical word, but basically like file share services like Dropbox, Drive, that kind of stuff. Eliminating possibilities for people to exfiltrate data from our environment. Like that sounds a lot better than we're getting rid of your Dropbox. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But and it also tells the why. It tells the why it's that's why you're doing it, isn't it? I mean, like I just so a lot of times like we have all the tools we need. It's just to your point, taking the time.
Yeah. And also there's the why, and then there's two, sometimes it's for compliance reasons and stuff like that. And if you're doing it for some kind of compliance reason, no one's going to argue. Well, almost no one will argue that. So you definitely want to put that in there as well.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break, Anthony, and just talk to our listeners for a bit. One, we just want to say thank you for listening. You listening is the reason why we do this. We enjoy putting the podcast together, and we enjoy that you're part of the podcast, and you can help us grow the podcast. We want to make this the podcast that like best reflects the things that you want to hear. And so we want to get interesting guests and really applicable topics. So you can help us do that. Make sure you're sharing the podcast. Make sure you're reaching out to us if there's anything you want to hear about. We love to hear from you. It's really good. It helps keep us driven and motivated. So we appreciate all of y'all being part of the podcast, and let's get back to it.
So Tanner, we've talked about the issues that we have. Now let's get into how can we help solve this, or how can we make it better, especially when it comes to employees. Like how can we basically give a better picture of what IT is and does to the employees at our organization?
Well, me and you were talking pre-show, and even when we were kind of mentioning it just a minute ago. It's almost the emails we send out are like alerts. Almost, you think of the alerts we get, right? You get server XYZ down. Like that's, I feel like the tone we're doing. We're not really sharing a story, and that's something that we need to be doing. Is we talked about it a little bit, right? Of like the why you're doing it, but that is the story. You need to share the story of why the particular thing is happening, or why something's getting upgraded, or for that matter, why you're moving to a new technology. It could be all of that. It doesn't have to just be upgrades and patches and all that, but we're moving to XYZ technology. Here's the why. Here's the training classes, all those kinds of things. So something I thought about, we're looking into email protection platforms. Now, most of the time, once we get this off the ground and up and going, we're never going to say anything about it ever, right? We're just going to say, unless there's an issue, we're not going to say something about it. But wouldn't it be nice if we kind of told that story about how it was helping us? Like if we had an email, of course, about why we're doing it and all the things that people need to know as it's going live. But then 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, we were kind of like, hey, just wanted to let you know that our email protection platform is reducing the amount of gray mail that you're getting by 15%. Do you know that that's about 15 hours of productivity for you every year, not having to check all that email? Kind of a fun fact. I feel like, again, most of what we say and when we do communicate is negative. It has a negative sound. That's pretty positive. Also shows the benefit. Like, we don't want to just say, here's a positive aspect, but we ideally want to show the benefit of the new technology or the updates or the patching or whatever we're deploying to them. Like, we want to tie it to them, and that's something we're just not doing.
So yeah, it sounds really like just us taking things for granted, like the software and tools that we have. You're talking about like the gray mail and stuff like that. We've rolled out systems and we kind of just take it for granted that it's there working and doing its job. And that's also, how the people that we work with, they take IT for granted, that things just automatically, just magically happen behind the scenes. One recent thing that we did, and we definitely showcased this. So we had to take the IVR down, which no one's happy about taking the IVR down with all the work that it does. But when we did that, we made sure to showcase that, hey, we're doing this because we're going to give the members more data that they are calling into member services to get. And this way they don't have to call into member services to get that data.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely, you want to give the reason how it's going to benefit people specifically if you really want them to be happy about, an outage.
Yeah. Something I thought about, like me and you, we work for utilities, of course, but there's probably people that listen to our show that work for all different kinds of organizations. But I think about whatever your organization sends out. Like, we have an annual report, right? And in that annual report, we talk about uptime. We talk about how reliable we've been. We talk about the great scores we have with customer service. that's what we're doing, right? I know in the co-op world or in the utility world, there's not as much marketing, but that is framing our positives that we've had that year and how it's benefiting the person that's buying the power that we're serving, right? No matter what it is, if you're local government, you have a service. You know, you have fire, you have police, you have trash and sewer and all those kinds of things. Like you're making an impact in people's lives. So think of like what you got, what your organization does, and then just like shrink that down into like how the IT group is supporting that organization.
The whole point of IT is to make everyone's job either easier or make them more efficient, in a secure manner. When we save someone time, like, are we showcasing that? Like, do you have any examples of that, Tanner?
Yeah, I don't think we're doing it. I know we're not doing it directly, but we do have a program where people can submit like, hey, I feel like this process is inefficient. And we usually, honestly, most of the solutions we come up with have some sort of technology element. And we do publish that. We say, hey, we've saved this many productivity hours. That's great, but there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that kind of relates to that as well. And some of it's hard to quantify. We have a process for those to like justify that we've actually saved time. And sometimes it's, you got to think about, well, how much time is someone really saving? It's a little bit tough to calculate sometimes, but a lot of the stuff we do, like going back to that email protection example, maybe it's not even blocking more. Maybe it's just easier to use. And if someone was taking 3 minutes to check their like spam emails and now they're taking 1 minute, that's a savings.
Yeah.
So we have a program like that. So if you don't, that's something you can maybe do across the company. It works really, really well. Where we're trying to figure out ways to save money. But yeah, I think other than that, no, that's the thing. We've talked about documentation before as like something that we as IT people, we don't love doing it. And I think this might be second.
Yeah, it's definitely extra work, but just sharing those small wins, that's really going to benefit you and benefit the organization and what they think of, IT. So next part is really just technology wins. Like there are technology wins that we have all the time. Like how are you sharing that? What's some examples that you can think of with that, Tanner?
Yeah, me and you talked a little bit about this, but today, as we were preparing for the show, there's a lot of times where we focus on like the technology. I mean, we even talked about it earlier. We almost got lost in ourselves and even thinking about that. But when you're focusing on the technology and how it impacts the user, if you can share an example where like a specific person did a specific thing and it wasn't you, like, but it was the technology that you were supporting that helped with that. So a good example of that might be we had as part of a pen test, we had kind of a social engineering element, right? And that element was that this person or this particular employee of the company was going to call some of our employees and it was actually going to try to get access to the help desk and then ultimately try to have them reset the password. He was going to pretend to be an employee. Well, they called and the person who answered the phone, that frontline person, they wouldn't give them the extension of the help desk. And they also, we listened to the call later. He asked if like, what's the procedure for getting your password reset? And they wouldn't give him any information about that. And that's a great win. It's a great technology, right? Because the pen test is helping protect us and helping us figure out where we're weak. That's a good thing, but that was a huge win. Like that should be celebrated. So we need an email, and I'm planning on doing an email. Like, hey, this person did a great job. They knew they didn't give any more information than they had to. They were still polite. They were still friendly. That's all the things we want to do when we're talking to people, but they weren't willing to break protocol. And that's a great win. And that's helping us be more secure, just like this penetration test that we hired them to do.
Yeah, that really showcases that your training's working, and it also like showcases why it's so important that everyone takes the training serious. So that's definitely a good thing. One thing I'll just obviously showcasing that, and I'll even sometimes this isn't always possible, but if you can ever, it really just has to happen organically. If someone is going to speak on a process improvement or something like that, if you can get someone to talk about that's outside of the ID department, like that really means a lot. So we revamped like our truck inspection process to make it easier on everyone. And, IT saying that is one thing, but we had a lineman stand up and talk about how easy it is and how much better it is than doing it on paper. Like that goes a whole lot further than anything what we could say. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I feel like an employee who has really gotten benefit of a technology, their words are worth 1,000 of your words, you know?
100%.
Because people just like, it's just like anything. They know we are going to, or that we are more likely going to try to sell something, right, as a good thing when we're talking with them. But for someone else to just recognize on their own with no motive for trying to determine whether a technology product is good or bad, if they say it's good. And yeah, I think you've mentioned in the past on the podcast, there was like a person who was just like adamant, that like change is not good, but you like able to convert that person. And man, they're almost like a disciple. You can have them go out and spread the word. Um,
Yeah.
and you don't even have to do as much, not having to put that marketing spin on things.
Yeah. Having people involved, like outside of IT, that definitely helps with that buy-in. What's some other things that you think we could do to help work with the employees to get them to buy into what we're selling?
I think there's a couple things. Well, I think one is not really necessarily a buy-in, but I think it helps people. We talked about being hidden earlier, right? And being not visible. I think it helps people remember what we do. People are not going to remember what EDR product you have. I don't care how many times you've told them that like this is blocked, or this is helping protect us or whatever. But if the things they are using can be branded in any way, then it's not always possible. And you're not going to brand your EDR solution, but we have a documentation solution. It's built off a technology product, and we call it the grid. And everybody knows what the grid is, right? The grid's easy to remember, but nobody knows what platform the grid is built on, and
Yeah.
nobody cares to know. But everybody knows the grid. I can just tell, I can walk up to any employee and be like, that information's located on the grid, and they know exactly where it is. And they also know that we help provide the grid. And so it's kind of a daily reminder that, like, hey, these are the things that these folks are doing behind the scenes other than just waiting there to answer the call. And then something we should be doing, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between marketing ourselves to employees and to like higher level leaders, but is making sure that we're tying everything into the greater mission, the greater vision for the company. Everything we do, whenever we're doing this marketing, whenever we are putting this positive spin on stuff, it should also tie itself in to the greater mission, because we don't just want to be visible, we want to be valuable, right? And we want to show the value that we're delivering. So to do that, we have to tie it into business initiatives and directives. So that should be something that we're always trying to do. So putting a positive spin on things, making sure that we're actually communicating what we're doing in a benefits focused way, and then making sure that we tie what we do into like the greater picture that everybody's aware of, because most employees know the company's vision, or you would hope they would. So when you tie it together, you're like, oh, this is how IT's doing that, and then I know how I'm doing it, and I know how the department over there is doing it, and it starts to feel more like we're all part of this thing and advancing the cause.
So I know there's some overlap, but like with the leadership of organizations, what's some ways that we can do for them to focus on them?
Well, yeah, leaders, and this depends on your organization and depends on like whether you have a board. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. Like I know, like local governments, for example, I don't think they have a board. They have a county commissioners, but then they have like a county manager, and I think that's who they report to. So maybe it is kind of a pseudo board, but for us as utilities, we have a board, and to them, we're not sending them regular emails about what we're doing in downtime and maintenance. So for them, it's a little bit different. I think we just have to like show them in like slide form or presentation form things. If you remember, if our listeners, I know the listeners that catch every episode, that we did an episode a while back on how to speak to your board. And some of the things we talked about were what the board cares about, and that being like impact to employees, the financial aspects, of course, but a big thing is risk. So we're taking that message, we're kind of marketing it a little bit now, we're tweaking it. It's going from just the why from a productivity standpoint or a feature set standpoint with an employee to the why from like a risk management standpoint or a security standpoint with the board. Because if for those that heard that episode, we actually did a survey, and that's what they said. They said that that's what they cared about. So kind of a little bit just knowing your audience, but I think kind of reworking and refocusing the same things you're telling employees, but just in a way that covers the topics that leaders really care about.
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out, and I know this might be hard, and maybe in certain scenarios this is not a good idea, but I do think it's important to show when you struggle. We show some ticket metrics, and when we're behind, like when we got a backlog of tickets, like we showcase that, and then we also show some metrics on the amount of vulnerabilities in the network. And sometimes we're behind, and like I don't cook the books, like I just show them. And that, because if they go in and see every single month that there's no struggle, there's, it's just automatically we got a green check mark. Like that's not what happens in real life. Like this, sometimes there's stuff that's hard to patch or whatever. Or there's a reason why you're behind. Like I think it's important to show that,
Mhm.
especially if you're trying to get more people, to get more assets. Don't be scared to share like things that aren't in a positive light.
Yeah, and keep good metrics. You're going to need that to your point. I know there's a lot of our listeners, it's a range, right? There's people with smaller IT groups, there's people with larger IT groups. There's a lot of people that wish they had a larger IT group that have a smaller IT group. The only way you're going to really be able to do that is to have really solid metrics. So I think Anthony mentioned a couple really good ones there, kind of tickets you're taking. And that's one of the reasons I really encouraged us to move to a ticketing system probably 10 years ago. It's just so we could track things that we're doing. But if you're not able to determine, like, I guess put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? To your point, if you go in there and every time you report to leadership, everything's a green check and you never share your struggles, then when you come and say, hey, we're struggling and we need an extra person, they're going to be like, well, that's not matching up with what you presented. I think for leadership and board, we need to be really succinct with how we show things. One thing I think I can't remember if we were both talking about this, but having like a really nice, like almost like one page kind of thing, whether it's a slide if you're doing a presentation or maybe just a handout on the things like the problem, that you're fixing with whatever you're doing, or excuse me, the problem that you're having, the solution that like you guys are, or we as IT are implementing, and the impact that's going to have on employees. You talked about that from when we are talking about that messaging to employees, but to leaders, like I think it really needs to be very direct. It's like, we had this problem. We'll go back to my email protection example. Too many emails, too many gray mail, and too many phishing attempts were getting through our existing email filter. We spent 3.5 months going through proof of concepts with several different vendors to make sure that we were making the right choice that would impact business the least. Impact, people are going to have less gray mail and less phishing attempts in their mailbox. That's going to keep them from being able to actually click on those and potentially open us up from a security standpoint. It's also going to save them time productivity wise because they're not going to be getting an email that's not needed. That like, and when you're reporting on like what you've done in the quarter and the year, those kinds of things, make sure those are the kinds of things you do. It's like you're focused on problem, solution, and the impact it gave. That can be really, really punchy, and that's kind of how you need to frame this marketing that we are doing of ourselves to leadership.
Yeah, that's something that, I kind of showcase what we do, but like sometimes I don't show why we did it on occasion. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely need to remember that.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about it in my last presentation as we talked about this. I was like, man, I should have done a much better job at talking about the why.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to mix things up for the senior staff and like the board for at our organization. Like I show them completely different things. And also sometimes like if you do it on a monthly basis, it can get stale and boring. And like for the board, like there's some things like we just show them quarterly, and that it's more impactful actually to show them quarterly than it is to show them monthly. And they, I think they're more into it than when we try to do stuff monthly.
Yeah, I think you can be creative too. I remember some of the things we had wrote down is like use some creativity, right? I talked about that impact or that problem solution impact, but you also could use some charts. You should use some graphs, some nice looking graphics. You can always do a heat map or a risk, as I mentioned in the risk that are avoided. Um, but anyway, yeah, keep it fresh. Don't I will say I do like having some things that you report on like on a regular basis. But what I do, and I'm not saying this is like the only way to do it, but I will report on that, but I will go through it quickly if it has not changed. I'll still report on it, but like I do a risk register. And if the risk register has not changed, I will not go through every single risk. Oh, these are our top 5 risks again. But if something changes, maybe it moves up, or we have something in particular happen in that quarter within that particular risk register or that particular item, then yeah, I'm going to bring attention to it. So make it a mix of like stuff that's new and novel, but also some sort of familiarity. You don't want, when you're reporting on a regular basis, whether it's employees or leaders, you don't want everything to be completely unfamiliar. And you also don't want everything to be completely familiar because like that's going to, if it's unfamiliar, people are going to be completely confused. If it's completely familiar, they're going to check out. Right. So I think of it like, I don't know if you ever been to like a concert and you really, really know or really big fan of like one band, but then someone's opening for them and you never heard of them. And like that's, you don't want to be kind of either one of those. You want to be somewhere in the middle because, hey, that first band, you're like, I can't even understand what they're saying up there. Like, what's going on? The second band, you're like, man, this is a song I've heard 78 times. You kind of want it to be a little bit of both just so that you like really, really stay engaged. So trying to think of a good example, and that's the best one I could come up with.
Yeah. And I've seen that and worked with that. And usually, like, if I want to change things up, I do it in a slow, methodical manner. And I don't completely, even if I want to revamp the entire thing, like, just change it in stages because they definitely like that familiarity. One last thing I just want to mention, like, as we go through like maturity levels. So like for people that are electric co-ops, like there's the cyber goals from the NRECA. If you achieve those, make sure you're showcasing that to senior leadership because that's stuff that they're expecting. And even if you're not complete, say, hey, we've got 9 of the 10 and give them updates. And if you're not a co-op, like, what security controls are you doing? Are you doing the CI security controls? On occasion, give them an update. Like I said before, don't be scared to show that things aren't perfect. It may, if you want help, like that may be the best way to do it. But anyways, you should be, whatever, like for security wise, like you should be showcasing as you grow periodically on that.
Definitely agree with that. I think those are wise words. You want to have, if you can, you talked about this with, kind of the standards or whatever, but I think pointing back to third party guidelines or frameworks or whatever is always a really good thing, and showing progress that you, sometimes I think people, because they see a lot up front and then they maybe hear something from you like 2 or 3 years on stuff. Like MFA is a great example. I feel like we put out MFA and then that's it. The users don't know anything about it, but we've added MFA to all kinds of admin interfaces. We've even adjusted it. We've put it in a lot of different places, but we never really say anything about it. Once we get it in, it's just, that's it.
So next, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to put each other on the spot. So this will be interesting. We're going to take turns. Each of us are going to give us a technology or something that we're looking to deploy or upgrade. And we're going to see how the other person markets that and see if they can come up with a good strategy how to market that to either the employees or senior leadership.
All right, Anthony, you ready? I've been saving this one all day.
All right. Let's see. I'm nervous.
All right, we are purchasing a new SAN, and we have to go through an upgrade overnight.
Okay. That's not a fun one. And we've just recently done that, and I'm thinking we probably didn't say a whole lot about it. So, okay. So I'll just say, for example, I'm just going to shoot an email out on that one. So in an email, let me try to put this together. So I would say the ID department is going to be upgrading our storage tonight. We're not expecting any outages, but the reason we're doing so is we have outgrown our current storage capabilities, and to continue growing the IT systems, we need to upgrade and allocate more capability to that. And then we're also going to be having a performance improvement by getting faster storage, and that'll make our systems a little more responsive.
Not bad. I like that.
I feel like that was not enough, but that's all right.
No, that's good.
All right, so let me see if I can come up with for one for you, Tanner. I got to make this very difficult.
Oh boy.
All right, I got one for you. So let's just say we're a company that we do not delete any email, and we're going to a 2-year retention And you know as well as I know, that's basically just in case if something happens, that data is not available for the bad actors. So how would you spin that in an email, Tanner?
That would be a tough one. All right, I think I got it. We'll see here. So we're gonna send an email, and we're gonna send it to employees, and I think we'll say this weekend we'll be turning on a policy given to us by our legal team as best practice within our industry to remove emails that are older than 2 years. This will help protect us in the event that we have a legal action. It'll also help our email system be more efficient because we will have less emails inside that we have to continue to keep for an indefinite amount of time. When you sign into your phone, it will be much faster and more responsive on your mobile device because of that smaller inbox. And then again, it'll better protect us. In addition, with this freed up space, we plan to implement some technologies that you have been wanting that will even improve your lives a little bit more. If you have any trouble, let us know.
Yeah, that's a hard sell, and unfortunately, the way things are, that's really just starting to become a way of life with keeping the retention on email.
All right. For the next one, I'll make it a lot easier on you. We'll just give you a softball. We're implementing, let's say, an AI tool from OpenAI.
And this email, like this is a little bit of a softball, so I appreciate it, Tanner. So in this one, I would put we are going to be implementing ChatGPT across our enterprise. I have attached the AI policy. Be sure to read this before using ChatGPT and make sure you're abiding by all the items in the policy. And we're doing this to help make the employees more efficient and give them better tool sets to help them do their job. I'm sure I can say that a whole lot better, but in a nutshell, that's what I would say. And then I would also say in the future, we will be doing I would also say that we're going to be doing a lunch and learn in the upcoming months. And then doing that, we're going to go into the use cases of ChatGPT and, how to do that. And then we'll also love to hear from the employees, some of their use cases and examples to kind of showcase what they're doing with this large language model. And into interim, I would just put a link to, a quick training session and just say in the interim, please reference this video and it'll give you some guidance on how you can use this tool.
I like it. I especially like that you talked about it. We talked about marketing, right? Marketing's also about getting in front of people or getting in their ears or eyes multiple times. Told them about it. You showed them about training that they're going to experience later. And you also said that we're going to follow up with you about something else. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, we did not do that on our.
Yeah, did you do that when you did that your AI model?
We didn't do it, and we did not do it in our telephone system, and we're wanting to go back and revisit that. We rolled it out, gave a bunch of training, and we've got a bunch of new people, and people just forget. And anyways, that's something we're going to be trying to do.
All right. Well, I'm expecting an easy one here.
All right. I don't know that I could give you an easy one. I don't know. It just doesn't feel natural. So let's see. So Tanner, I think this is one you did recently. So we'll see how you do on this. So you're going to be implementing a new project management tool across the org.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was pretty straightforward. Now, it's funny when we're going through this game, I keep thinking about what I did, and I'm like, oh, I wish I'd done it better. But anyway, let's just pretend I've got it there to do over again. I think I would say, problem. I would do the board thing, right? I would say many employees have come to us struggling to help organize their projects. We worked with an internal employee team made up of representatives from individual departments. And together, we selected an awesome project management tool that's going to really help the company organize ourselves. This tool has many features, but one of the ones I would mention maybe is the ability to be able to view it not only at work, but on their mobile device so they can keep up with projects no matter where they're at. I think like you, I would probably mention the training that we're going to be providing. And then I would probably say something, our accounting team has been using this tool for several months. And as we do our training, they are also going to share the wins that they have already seen in this short time period. So that to try to maybe generate momentum. So that's probably how I would do it. A little tough to do on the spot.
Yeah.
When we were talking about this earlier, I was like, oh, that'll be no problem. But when you're writing an email, there's a lot of like, right, backspace, right, backspace.
Yeah. And a lot of times I'll just mull over it or I even send it off to other people on the team to review. So yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
I don't enjoy doing that on the fly.
Yeah, that's tougher than I thought it would be. But it was fun though. I enjoyed that game.
So before we wrap up, are there any key takeaways that you have, Tanner?
I honestly don't think there's anything more than what we've already said. I think, we've given some really good insight. In fact, I need to take some of that insight myself. But I would say don't get discouraged. Don't feel like it's lost, that like you can't turn the ship around. I think over time we know technology is not slowing down. There's going to be a ton of stuff you're implementing and doing updates for, and you have to start somewhere. So start somewhere. Don't feel like, well, we haven't been doing any of these things for the last 5 years, so it's just not worth it. You can always be improving what the other departments think about you and understand about what you're doing behind the scenes. So don't give up.
Yeah, mine's really just reemphasizing what you just said. But some of the feedback I got early on in my days was that our department is a little bit of a silo and we're not great at communicating. And we've really put a big focus on communicating. And now we're trying to change how we communicate. And then I feel like my people were communicating to the employees, but I wasn't showcasing what we were doing to the senior staff and the board very well. So anyways, I try to take our wins and make sure I'm showcasing all the work that we're doing and not just the amount of tickets that we do.
So Anthony, I've enjoyed this episode. I hope you have too. Really taught me a lot, which I think is always good. And people don't really realize that. I feel like oftentimes when we make these episodes, I feel like I'm writing my own notes in the background, if that makes sense. Things that I need to do better. But to the listeners, if you got your own, you saved the day and nobody noticed story, we definitely want to hear about it. So when we post this episode, if you have anything like that, a funny story about doing something in the background, definitely on our social media, definitely comment on that and share that. Or if you want to, you can feel free to email it to us. It might be something we can share on a later episode. We're always looking for ideas, so if there's anything that you want to hear us talk about, feel free to contact us. And as always, we drop new episodes every other Monday, so make sure you're following along and you have those notifications on. Thanks for hanging with us tonight, and until next time, this is Off the Wire.
Thank you, everyone.